Paralyzed, betrayed, reborn, my neighbor slept with my wife. Then this happened. The world shattered the day a careless driver stole my ability to move, to speak, to truly live. But that wasn't the end of my suffering. It was merely the prelude to a symphony of betrayal that would leave me questioning everything I thought I knew. My wife cheated on me with her despicable neighbor while I was paralyzed. However, a miraculous surgery granted me a second chance. A chance to rebuild not only my body but my entire existence. My name is Ethan John, and the past year or two have been a merciless roller coaster, plunging me into unimaginable depths before unexpectedly soaring to breathtaking heights. It all began with a horrific accident that severed my connection to the physical world, trapping me in a paralyzed prison, unable to utter a single word. But that was just the opening act of my personal tragedy. What followed was a heart-wrenching sequence of betrayals, agonizing abuse, and soul-crushing misery that threatened to extinguish my very spirit. Yet, against all odds, I not only survived but managed to reclaim my life and even find happiness. This is my story. It started with an accident, a moment of carelessness that irrevocably altered my destiny. I was enjoying a perfect afternoon, the sun warm on my face as I rode my motorcycle, when a truck driver, seemingly oblivious to my presence, recklessly pulled out onto the highway. The impact was cataclysmic. I have only fractured memories of the collision, a blinding flash of twisted metal, followed by an all-consuming darkness. When I finally regained consciousness in the sterile confines of a hospital room, I discovered the horrifying truth. I was completely paralyzed, unable to move a single muscle. I couldn't speak, couldn't even manage more than a feeble blink. The doctor, his voice laced with a pity I didn't want, declared I was lucky to be alive. At that moment, the word felt like a cruel and bitter joke. Immobilized from the neck down, my existence was reduced to the bare minimum, breathing and blinking. Swallowing was a monumental effort, and the thought of needing the bathroom filled me with a deep, visceral humiliation. The one faint glimmer of hope, if it could even be called that, was the massive multi-million-dollar settlement I received from the trucking company. All my medical expenses were covered, and a substantial monthly stipend would provide for both Laura, my wife, and myself for the remainder of our lives. We were financially secure, cushioned by a wealth born from my suffering and Laura's paralegal profession. But money, as it turns out, is a pathetic substitute for the shattered pieces of my inner world. After an agonizing 6 months confined to the hospital, I was finally permitted to return home, my hopes tentatively rising at the prospect of finding solace in familiar surroundings. But my optimism was tragically misplaced. It was then, within the walls of my own home, that my life spiraled into a nightmare far darker than anything I could have ever imagined. How so? The counselor gently inquired, her eyes fixed on me with empathetic intensity. I felt a wave of shame wash over me, making it difficult to even speak. "I'm so ashamed," I mumbled. "I don't think I can even bring myself to remember what happened in those 6 months." "That's all right," she reassured me, her voice calm and soothing. "Everything you say here will remain confidential. Remember, I am here to help you heal." I nodded, took a shaky sip of water and steeled myself to continue. "Let's start with your marriage," she suggested softly. "Tell me a little about that." I recounted the story of my relationship with Laura, how we met in college, fell in love, and married soon after graduation. I was only 25 when the accident occurred, and we had only been married for 3 blissful years. I worked as a mechanical engineer, and she was a paralegal at a large law firm downtown. We were fortunate enough to afford a spacious 3-bedroom apartment, originally intended to have one of the rooms as a nursery. We both used the second bedroom as an office, but after the accident, the nursery was transformed into my room, as it was the only room spacious enough to accommodate all my medical equipment. Laura did her best to care for me during the initial month or two, but it was painfully clear that she was overwhelmed and ill-equipped for the task, especially when it came to the most basic needs, like the bathroom. So, she sought assistance. Greg and Collie Wallace, our neighbors, readily offered their help in any way they could. At the time, I considered them close friends. Greg, an attorney at Laura's firm, often drove her to work. Collie, a nurse at a nearby hospital, would regularly check in on me to ensure I was comfortable. She even helped us secure a home health nurse to look after me during the day. But even with all of that support, it was obvious that Laura was struggling. That's when Greg began stepping into a more intimate role. The counselor, her brow furrowed in concern, prompted, "Yes, it started innocently enough," I began, my voice trembling with suppressed emotion. But I could see that he had feelings for my wife. Laura would frequently break down in tears, overwhelmed by the situation, and Greg was always there, ready to offer a comforting shoulder. I could hear them in the living room, their muffled voices growing increasingly intimate, the sounds of their forbidden affections echoing through our home. Then, he would lead her into our former master bedroom and have sex with her, desecrating the space that was once a symbol of our love. But it didn't end there, did it? The counselor asked gently, her eyes filled with empathy. I shook my head, the memory a searing brand on my soul. No, I whispered, my voice barely audible. Afterward, he would come into my room to taunt me. He would tell me in vivid detail how he felt after being with my wife. I saw the counselor's expression shift, a mixture of horror and disbelief etched on her face. I'm so sorry, I stammered, overwhelmed by the weight of my confession. Where was his wife during all of this? The counselor inquired, her voice carefully controlled. Was she working? Yes, I replied, and it wasn't unusual for her to be gone all night. Working the graveyard shift. I see. The counselor responded somberly. Go on. I took a deep, shuddering breath before continuing. The words like shards of glass scraping against my throat. After about a month I trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. The shame was a suffocating weight, pressing down on me, stealing my breath. He entered my room as Laura was taking a shower. I managed to force out, my voice barely a whisper. Did he abuse you? The counselor asked gently. Her eyes filled with a mixture of compassion and concern. I knew it as I wiped the tears from my face. Yes, I said softly. How often did this happen? The counselor inquired, her voice laced with a gentle urgency. I'm not sure. I admitted, my memories blurring together in a haze of pain. Maybe a couple of times every week for about 4 months. He even said he was going to invite some of his friends over to have fun with me. Did your wife know this was going on? The counselor inquired, her brow furrowed in concern. I shrugged, the question a knife twisting in the wound. I don't know. I mumbled, she was never present when it happened. She'd always come by later and say how great it was to have people like Greg to look after me. I'll never forget the day he hauled in that blasted monitor and installed it on my dresser. He screwed my wife as if I wasn't even in the next room. Laura thought it was great that he brought it in. When did the abuse stop? The counselor inquired, her voice soft and encouraging. The day Dr. Victor stopped over to see me, I replied, the memory etched into my mind with painful clarity. I remember that day like it was yesterday. Laura invited Dr. Victor, my attorney, into my room just a few hours after Greg had abused me. Dr. Victor was an older, slightly shorter, balding man with a distinctive German accent. Ethan, there's a Dr. Victor here to see you, Laura announced as she ushered him into my room. Dr. Victor approached my bed and introduced himself, then proceeded to introduce an assistant with a tablet. My lawyer, Jacob Harrison, was also present. Ethan, I'm Dr. Franklin Victor, the man started, his voice calm and confident. And I'm here to discuss a possible treatment for your condition. He glanced at Laura before continuing, his tone leaving no room for argument. I'll take care of it from here, Missy, he stated firmly. Please wait in the other room. Laura, a concerned expression etched on her face, reluctantly exited the room. He turned back to me, pulled up a chair, and looked me directly in the eyes before speaking. Now, Ethan, allow me to explain, he began. I manage a high-end research facility on Lake Arrowhead. We've been conducting revolutionary research on 3D bone restoration and nerve healing implants. I believe your situation is tailor-made for us. He paused, his gaze unwavering. I've glanced at your records, and I know how much damage you sustained, he continued. I believe we can help you regain most, if not all, of your physical ability. Is this something you might be interested in? Please blink once to confirm, twice to deny. What else could I possibly say to something like this? Of course I did blink once. Good, he replied with a reassuring smile. Now, you must understand that this is all experimental, he cautioned. But we have received approval for human testing. Thanks to external grants, it will cost you nothing. That was fantastic news. But I was naturally apprehensive about the experimental nature of the treatment. I know you're probably concerned about this being experimental, he continued, as if reading my mind. Don't be concerned about that. Even if the operation fails, you will not be any worse off than you are today. But I feel you are a good candidate and I'm confident that everything will be alright. In fact, if we're as successful as I expect, you'll be stronger than you were before the accident. That statement ignited a spark of hope within me, a fragile ember glowing in the darkness. So, I listened intently as he described the intricate details of the operation. Essentially, he explained, all the damaged vertebrae would be replaced with new vertebrae composed of a composite material. That was even stronger than the original. Furthermore, the new vertebrae would be created using a 3D printer, utilizing data from my own body. In principle, the new bones would be perfect replicas of the old ones, albeit significantly stronger. In addition, he would implant tiny electrical stimulators to assist in healing the injured nerves. The operation would take approximately 3 to 4 hours, and the recuperation period could last several weeks, depending on how quickly I healed. Dr. Victor also revealed that he had already evaluated the data from my medical records. and begun the process of manufacturing the new bones. I hope you don't mind, he said, his tone apologetic. Initially, we wanted to explore if we could recreate the injured bone using data from your records. We chose to proceed with the surgery after determining that we could. When I was strong enough, he indicated I could start physical therapy, which may last a few weeks. So, is this something you would like to try? The man inquired, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. Blink once for yes, or twice for no. Of course, I blinked once. He smiled, rubbing his hands together with a barely concealed excitement. Very good, he declared. He motioned for his assistant to join us. Please let Mr. John read the agreement, he instructed. The assistant approached and held the tablet in front of me as I meticulously reviewed the document. When I had finished, he directed me to blink once to indicate my agreement. I blinked once. Very well, he remarked, instructing his aide to have me electronically sign the document using my thumbprint. Once that was completed, Jacob countersigned to confirm that he had witnessed my consent to the operation. Are you ready to get started? He inquired, his voice brimming with eagerness. Of course, I blinked once. He smiled warmly. Let's get going, he said, his tone filled with enthusiasm. Greg, we have everything you'll need at our facilities. Waiting in the parking area. Laura stopped us on our way out. Where are you going? She demanded, her voice laced with suspicion. Doctor. Victor stared at her, his expression unreadable, before responding. Your husband has agreed to a procedure that could help him get back on his feet. Where are you taking him? She persisted. How long will he be gone? How much will this cost? We are transporting him to my facility on Lake Arrowhead, the doctor stated, his voice firm and unwavering. He may be gone for several weeks, depending on how well he responds to the treatment and rehabilitation. His doctor and lawyer are well aware of what is going on, and they have given their approval, as has your spouse. Cost is not a concern. Now, if you don't mind, let's get started. Wait, I haven't seen any agreement, and I don't even know what's going to happen, she exclaimed, her voice rising in panic. He doesn't need your approval, Mrs. John, Jacob interjected, his tone sharp and authoritative. He is crippled. Everything was explained to him, and he gave his permission. You want your husband to get healthy, don't you? Yes, of course I do, she replied, a hint of shame creeping into her voice. Can I at least come see him? Perhaps after the procedure, when he's up to having visitors. You can come, the doctor suggested, his voice laced with a polite but firm dismissal. Otherwise, you should probably stay right here for now. We will be in touch. Perhaps now is a good moment to say farewell and wish your husband well. Laura stepped forward and planted a chaste kiss on my lips. Get well, honey, she whispered, her eyes avoiding mine. Let me know when I can come see you, okay? Of course, I couldn't say anything, but a burning sensation stirred within me. Doctor. Victor and his aide carefully wheeled me out to the van. Once inside, the aide took the wheel, and we were on our way. I watched as Laura stood in the parking lot, watching us depart, her expression inscrutable. I had no idea what she was thinking, but I felt as though I had been freed from a long and brutal hostage situation. A few hours later, we arrived at the facility, and I was ushered into a beautifully appointed room where a team of nurses began preparing me for the treatment. I hope you don't mind, Ethan, but I thought it best to get started right away, doctor, Victor said, his voice kind and reassuring. He turned to face the nurses. Once you have him prepared, please bring him to the operating room. Yes, doctor. Victor, one of the nurses replied. Okay, Ethan, I will leave you in the capable hands of your nurses, and I'll see you in the OR, he said before exiting the room. Soon, they had me undressed, bathed, and dressed in a gown that exposed my back. They transferred me onto a stretcher and wheeled me to the operating room, where 3 exceptionally large orderlies carefully lifted me and placed me face down on the table. The anesthesiologist performed his duties, and the last thing I heard before drifting into unconsciousness was Dr. Victor exclaiming, "Oh my!" When I opened my eyes, I was still face down, but this time I was secured within some sort of device that kept me completely immobilized. A tube was inserted down my throat, and N4 was connected to my arm. A blood pressure cuff was wrapped around my right arm. Suddenly, the device rotated and I found myself looking up at Dr. Victor. You're awake, he stated, his voice calm and reassuring. Good, you'll be pleased to hear that the operation went smoothly. We'll have to keep you motionless for a few days to ensure proper healing. After all, we had to do a lot of replacing. You may experience tingling or itching in your back. This is normal. It means the implants are performing their function. Both the nurses and I will keep a careful eye on you. Don't be scared. Periodically. Just try to relax for now. We'll talk in a few days. After checking my vital signs and giving the nurses some instructions, he left. Relax, he had said. What else was I going to do? He was correct about one thing. I did feel a persistent tingling sensation in the middle of my back, which was immensely irritating. I also felt itchy and desperately wanted to scratch, but I couldn't. As unpleasant as it was also strangely refreshing to feel anything at all after nearly a year of complete numbness. That night, 2 nurses entered to wash me down. I could feel them washing my legs, buttocks, and back. I was startled. More than startled, I was shocked. I could really feel what they were doing. They rolled me over in the bed and started washing me from the front. That's when I caught a good look at them. They were both very young and stunningly gorgeous. One had shoulder-length blonde hair, while the other was brunette. As they bathed me, I felt a sensation I hadn't experienced in a long time. I couldn't move my head, but I noticed subtle smiles on their faces as they observed me. The blonde gazed at me with an unmistakable twinkle in her eyes. "Well, I'm no doctor, but it looks like something is working down here," she added with a playful smile. They giggled softly but continued with their work. They finished what they were doing and left the room, but not before offering me a few words of encouragement. I remained in that device for long days. The days were monotonous and virtually identical. Every morning, I was subjected to x-rays and nurses would diligently massage my arms and legs. Later in the day, I received a thorough sponge bath. As the days passed, I became increasingly aware of the sensations returning to my body. On the 4th day, Dr. Victor entered my room and examined me with meticulous attention. He sat down next to me, pulled out a pin, and abruptly inserted it into my calf. I felt something, a sharp, stinging sensation, and involuntarily made a noise. Although I still couldn't speak because of the tube in my throat, he stared intently at me. "Did you feel that?" he inquired. I blinked once to confirm because I was still strapped down. He smiled. "Very good," he said approvingly. He then asked me to try moving my toes. To my utter astonishment, I could. Next, he instructed me to move my fingers and again, I succeeded. "Outstanding," he exclaimed triumphantly. He meticulously reviewed my x-rays and summoned several nurses into the room. "I think it's time we got Mr. John out of this contraption," he declared. They removed the tube from my throat, disconnected the catheter, disconnected all of the tubes, and released me from the device. Then they carefully carried me to a gurney and transported me to my room, where they gently placed me in a bed. Dr. Victor conferred briefly with the nurses before settling down next to me. "I can't tell you how pleased I am with your results," he told me, his voice filled with genuine enthusiasm. "We will need to start your physical therapy right away, and we will begin with some exercises you may do in your bed. I don't want to put too much pressure on your back right now." He placed a cup with a straw into my mouth. "Take a drink," he urged. I did, and the cool liquid felt incredibly soothing as it went down my parched throat. "Try to say something," he advised when I finished swallowing. "Wow," I managed to mutter, my voice raspy and weak. He laughed and nodded his head. "That will do," he said, his eyes sparkling with delight. "How do you feel, like a new man?" I replied, my voice still feeble. I could feel tears welling up in my eyes, blurring my vision. This was the first time I had been able to do or say anything since my accident. He grabbed a tissue and wiped my eyes. "I understand this is an extremely emotional moment for you, Ethan," he said softly. "For now, I want you to relax. Don't overdo it. Your back still has to heal, but the implants appear to be operating properly. I'm concerned that you've lost a considerable amount of muscle mass since the accident, so we'll set you up with a diet and exercise plan to help you regain muscle function. Now, I'd like to present you to the staff members who will be looking after you." He waved his hand and several young women entered the room. "This is Emily, your nutritionist," he explained, indicating a slender woman with a warm smile. "And this is Nina, your physical therapist," he announced, gesturing to a short-haired, muscular blonde who nodded once. "Rachel will be your day nurse," he declared, pointing to a petite woman with short brown hair. "And this is Megan, your night nurse," he explained, gesturing to a taller, red-haired woman. Her eyes twinkled as she smiled at me. "Nice to meet you," she said softly. "Now, if there is anything you need, please feel free to let us know," the doctor remarked, his voice kind and encouraging. "We all live here at the facility, so we're available 24 hours a day." He then motioned for the women to leave the room briefly before turning back to me. "Ethan, I need to talk to you about something," he said, his expression turning serious. "This is a difficult subject, so please let me know if you feel uncomfortable." "I'm curious," I stated, my heart pounding in my chest. "I detected a good degree of rectal damage when we began the surgery on you," he began, his voice hesitant. "I also collected samples of what I found in that region. I'm not here to condemn, but I was wondering," he trailed off, searching for the right words. "No," I said, feeling a wave of shame wash over me. "I see," he replied somberly. "So? You were abused. Tears began to stream down my cheeks, uncontrollable and silent. Yes, I managed to choke out. He cleaned my face with a gentle touch before speaking. You are aware that I have an obligation to disclose this to the authorities? He asked, his voice laced with concern. In this case, abusing a disabled person is a felony, as well as a hate crime. I collected samples of what I discovered, and the lab is conducting an analysis that includes DNA. Do you know who did this to you? Yes, I said softly, my voice barely audible. Was your wife involved? He inquired. I shook my head. I do not know. She was never present when he did it, I replied, the pain raw and visceral. Are you willing to name the person who did this to you? I nodded my head. Yes, I informed him, my voice gaining a slight measure of strength. Good. I will call the authorities once we have completed the analysis. In the interim, I'll connect you with a counselor. Thanks, I whispered, my voice trembling. You are welcome, he replied, his tone filled with compassion. Now, shall we focus on getting you back on your feet? They fitted a contraption to the head of my enormous bed that allowed me to lift weights while lying down, but Dr. Victor didn't want me to use it right away. For the first week, Nina brought in a machine to perform leg workouts. Nina proved to be quite the therapist. As she yelled for cadence as I pushed with one foot and then the other, Schnell treiben, she retorted in German and I strained to keep up. I couldn't help but notice her accent was much stronger than Dr. Victor's. She would have made an excellent drill sergeant. As she urged me to move faster, she exclaimed, we'll feed you some protein to get your muscles back in condition. Every falling in town will be after you and probably a frustrated housewife or two. She said with a wicked giggle. This gets us to the present. She sat down her pain and looked at the counselor, who would carefully listen to my narrative. Ethan, the next few weeks will be very challenging for you. Frankly, I'm not sure which will be more difficult, the physical or mental recuperation. I'm delighted you feel comfortable talking to me about this. And I hope you take action against the people who harmed you. They breached the law and must be dealt with. I want you to know that I'm here for you and you may contact me at any time. Thanks. With that, the session was over, and I was taken back to my room. A few days later, Dr. Victor entered my room, leading a couple of men in dark suits. I realized Jacob was with them. After chasing the nurses out of my room, the doctor sat down beside me. Ethan, these men are here to talk about your circumstances at home. I also called your lawyer. I hope you do not mind. Not at all, I replied. Jacob appeared stunned when he heard me say, You're looking much better. Ethan, he murmured, standing over me. My grinned as I reached out to shake his hand. Surprised, he agreed and shook my hand. Thank you. I'm feeling a lot better. I can now eat on my own. He is doing quite well, Dr. Victor said. If all goes well, he'll be even stronger than he was before the accident. That's good to hear, Jacob responded. Ethan, this is Agent Cole and Agent Davis from the state police. Are you ready to speak with them? Absolutely. The three guys took up chairs and Agent Cole produced a recorder. Mr. John, I hope you don't mind if we record this interview, he said. Not at all, I replied. They spent the next hour taking notes and asking questions, as I described the past 4 months of abuse at the hands of someone I believed. This was the third time I had to admit what had happened to me, and it was equally humiliating and agonizing. And you say this Mr. Wallace is a man who assaulted you repeatedly? Agent Cole inquired. Yes, I answered. I have a sample I took from Mr. John along with the analysis, Dr. Victor stated. There was considerable rectal injury that needed to be addressed. That's all in my report. Agent Cole stated we'll need to take that into evidence. Dr. Victor nodded his head. Tell me, Mr. John, Agent Cole asked, glancing back at me. Is this the same Greg Wallace who works at McMaster and Williams law firm? Yes, it is, I answered. And your wife works at this firm as well? Yes, she does, I informed him. And you allege that the two of them have been engaged in an affair during this time? He inquired. That's correct, I replied. Was she ever present when the assaults took place? Agent Cole inquired. I shook my head. She was at the apartment, but we never shared a room as far as I recall. Indeed. She appeared to believe that he was assisting me in some way, the agent replied. Nevertheless, we'll have to bring her in as an accessory even if she wasn't physically in the same room. It's hard to believe she didn't notice anything was wrong. Ethan, are you certain about all of this? Jacob inquired, surprised. I know Greg personally, and I find it hard to believe he would do something like this. Maybe you don't know him as well as you think, I remarked rhetorically. You have Dr. Victor's report and you have the sample. I can't explain it, Jacob repelled. I take it you're going to want a divorce from your wife. Absolutely, I said nothing. Okay, I'll start the paperwork. I'll contact you before we file. I also want a restraining order, I informed him. I don't want either of them anywhere near me. and I sure as heck don't want them in my apartment. As of right now, we'll be treating your apartment as a potential crime scene, Agent Cole informed us. How much longer is Mr. John going to be here? He inquired. Hard to say, the doctor replied. At least 5 more weeks, possibly longer. It depends on how well he reacts to the treatment and therapy. Very well, Cole replied. At least he'll be safe for a while longer. Get a search warrant for the John apartment and arrest warrants for Mrs. John and Mr. Wallace. The other agent nodded and left the room. Cole turned around to face me. Just so you know, Mr. John, Cole explained. We're going to charge your wife as an accessory. If it comes down to it, are you willing to testify against her in court? Yes, I said. He replied quietly. Davis had returned and gave a thumbs up. The warrant will be ready when we get back to the office. Cole nodded and packed his gear, including the sample he received from Dr. Victor. We'll be in touch, Mr. John. I hope everything works out for you. Thank you, I replied. After they went, Jacob approached me. Ethan, you are making serious charges. Greg might lose everything, his job, his license, and possibly even his wife. Are you very convinced about this? I'm 100% confident, Jacob. I honestly do not care if he loses everything. In fact, given what he has done, he deserves to lose everything. I hope you are on my side in this. Tell me right now if you aren't, and I'll get another lawyer. I am on your side, Ethan. It's only, I don't know. It's difficult for me to believe I met his wife and ate in their home. I've never seen anything to indicate he'd do something so dumb. Well, he did, I explained. Can I sue him as well? I don't see any reason why not, Jacob responded. We reside in one of the few states where alienation of affection cases are permitted, so I will investigate that as well. However, you should be aware that they rarely travel far. I genuinely apologize for this, Ethan. I had no idea. It is not your fault. I had no means to let anyone know. We exchanged goodbyes and he went. I felt slightly better knowing that something was going to be done. The next few weeks passed fast. Now I had me standing up and no time at me. She made me walk on a treadmill, then she made me work with weights. Emily put me on a high-protein and fiber diet, and I started to observe my muscle mass returning to normal. Meanwhile, the authorities were preparing a case against Greg, and Laura. Jacob believed it was prudent to keep the divorce papers until she was arrested. Agent Cole and Davis returned several times with state prosecutors, seeking more comprehensive information from me about the assaults. They informed me that the analysis confirmed that Dr. Victor had retrieved Greg's DNA from me. Jacob also hired a private investigator to acquire evidence of their adultery. It wasn't tough because the two of them were very open about their romance. Greg's wife C appeared to be unaware of their actions as she worked nights when they messed around and slept during the day when they were at work. After gathering proof and completing the paperwork, Jacob came out to review it with me. He intended to sue for divorce on grounds of adultery, neglect, and cruelty. He had lots of images, videos, and audio evidence to back up his claim. I didn't want to hear or see what they had done, especially because I'd seen and heard enough about them to last a lifetime. Laura was technically his subordinate, and Greg had mainly broken company policy. Furthermore, he intended to denounce Greg to the State Bar Organization and had papers prepared accusing him of multiple ethics violations. I couldn't help but notice that Laura never phoned the facility or came out to see how I was doing. Apparently, she and Greg were too busy screwing about to notice me. Oh well, I figured in it. After 2 months, the authorities raided the firm and detained them. Jacob's process server was also present, delivering the paperwork to all parties involved. My lawyer even contacted the media, which obtained footage of the two cheaters being placed in the back of police cruisers. Shocked by the charges and evidence we had against Greg, the business acted fast and settled with Jacob for the majority of what we requested. They also fired both of them and reported Greg to the state bar. She learned of the arrest that day when Greg called her from the county prison, telling her he was in jail and needed her to be in court. Look for his arraignment so she could post bail. Agent Cole and Davis met with Dr. Victor, and the three of them took me to the courthouse for my arraignment. Khan noticed me as I was brought in for the hearing and ran up to me. How is he? She questioned Dr. Victor. I looked up to her. Better, I replied. Seeing her expression, it had been a year since she last heard me talk. Haven't you heard your husband has abused me on several occasions during the last 4 months? At the same time, he has been banging Laura. You did not know. Oh my God, I did not know, Ethan. Please believe me. I had no idea what was happening. I've also filed for divorce from Laura, and I'm suing Greg for alienation of affection if you like. I may offer you my attorney's name in case you decide to file for divorce. Damn right. I'm divorcing the son of, she explained. We entered the courthouse and saw the sheriffs bring Greg and Laura, both dressed in orange jumpsuits, with their wrists and feet shackled and joined to another chain around their waists. They both looked terrible. The state prosecutor requested that both be remanded without bail, citing Greg's potential flight risk and a restraining order against Cancelora. He also informed the judge that I was going through medical treatment and had filed for divorce. The prosecutor expressed anxiety that Greg would physically retaliate against me. The judge reviewed the documentation in front of him and agreed ordering them both in prison without bail until the hearing, which is scheduled for the following week. As they took Greg and Laura out, she noticed me seated in the back of the courtroom, her eyes wide, and as I raised one hand middle finger out, Davis rolled me out of court. She halted them and melted down to speak with me. Ethan, I'm really sorry about everything. I honestly didn't know. That's all right, see, I said. How long are you going to be gone, she inquired. I shrugged my shoulders. I don't know, I replied. Perhaps a couple more weeks. They actually did a great job. I can even walk around now. That's great. Please stay in touch and let me know how you're doing. I will see, I said. We really need to go now, Miss Agent Cole stated. CA nodded and stepped up. I understand. Take care of yourself, Ethan, she said, wheeling me to the van. When we returned to the facility, I was escorted to the physical therapy room where Nat was waiting for me. About time you showed up, time to begin. She pushed me through my paces and even gave me extra workouts to compensate for being late. I was sore when she finished with me, but I felt amazing. Megan stayed after dinner to check my vitals and complete her papers. When she was finished, she approached the bed, make sure I was comfortable, sat down and looked at me for a few moments. Something appeared to be bothering her. Is everything okay? I remarked. You seem to be thinking about something. I was just wondering about something, she explained. Do you find me attractive? She inquired. Absolutely. I think you're a wonderful girl and an excellent nurse. It's just you haven't made a pass at me. The entire time you've been here, I was wondering if I had done anything to anger you, or if you didn't think me attractive. I smiled at her before replying. I'm actually very attracted to you. I told you. It's simply that, for one thing, I'm still married. And secondly, I'm relearning how to move around. I haven't been able to speak for a year. How about your other patients? You're my only patient, she explained quietly. Doctor Victor is very particular about who he assigns to the night shift. So in addition to being a medical genius and a miracle worker, Dr. Victor is also a matchmaker. She laughed at that. It has happened before, she added. Well, Megan, I tend to have a soft spot for shy, attractive redheads. And I'm getting divorced, so there's that chagrin broadly in her eyes twinkle. Would it be okay if I kissed you goodnight, Sheehan? Definitely, I said. She leaned in and softly kissed me. After a second, the delicate kiss evolved into something more sensual, with our tongues battling in one another's lee. When she broke the kiss, I felt something. I'm here for you all night, every night. If you ever need anything, call me. I know you're not ready to make love, but I'd love to just spend time with you. Megan murmured quietly. I will, I promise, I replied. She smiled and softly exited the room. I fell asleep thinking about what she said, with images of red-headed angels dancing through my mind. All night. The next several days sped by with not working me even harder. I discovered that I could walk many miles on the treadmill, and my muscles had improved to the point where I could bench press more weight than ever, or before the daily x-rays revealed that my replacement vertebrae were performing even better than Dr. Victor had projected, with the implants repairing nearly all of the damaged nerves. Megan kept me